There are wines in Italy that became famous because they conquered the world. And then there are wines that survived despite the world trying to erase them. In Trentino, there is a grape that almost disappeared because apples became more profitable. There is a dessert wine made from grapes left hanging until Easter. There is a valley where vineyards require 5 times more labor than normal agriculture. And somewhere, high in the mountains, there is a winemaker who waits for a bear to finish patrolling the vineyard before starting work. No, I'm not joking about the bear. We'll come back to that. This sounds less like viticulture and more like mythology, but it's real. Because Trentino is not just a wine region, it is one of the last places in Europe where wine still feels deeply connected to landscape, isolation, survival, and memory. If episode 1 was about how Trentino became a wine region, this episode is about the wines themselves. And this is actually where things become truly fascinating, because the deeper you go into Trentino wine, the stranger the stories become. You start with sparkling wine. Then suddenly you're talking about endangered grapes. Then valleys transformed into apple empires. Dessert wines aged until Holy Week. And mountain vineyards protected by fungus-resistant vines because normal viticulture simply stops working at those altitudes. And beneath all of that, there's a larger story about what modern agriculture protects, about what modern agriculture preserves, and what it destroys. If Trentino has a soul in red wine form, it's Teroldego. Teroldego grows primarily in one place, the Campo Rotagliano, a gravelly plain where alpine rivers deposited layers of mineral-rich stones over thousands of years. Outside this area, the grape often loses its identity entirely, but here it becomes extraordinary. The wine is deeply colored, almost black-purple in certain vintages, with blackberry, blueberry, spice, earth, and a texture that feels simultaneously powerful and soft. And there is something remarkable hidden inside its DNA. Recent studies confirmed that Teroldego is closely related to Durezza, one of the parent grapes of Syrah, which means that hidden inside this isolated alpine valley is part of the same family tree that eventually produced one of the most famous red wines on earth. But Teroldego nearly disappeared in the 20th century. Like many indigenous grapes, it was pushed aside by international varieties and bulk production. Supermarkets prefer grapes people already recognize: Cabernet, Merlot, Pinot Grigio, not Teroldego. It survived largely because a handful of producers refused to let it vanish. Most famously, Elisabetta Foradori, often called the Queen of Teroldego, helped rescue the grape and reintroduce people to what it could become when treated seriously. Some of her wines were fermented in clay amphorae, ancient vessels older than the Roman Empire itself, and the result feels timeless, not polished into international saintness, just unmistakably itself. But not every native grape in Trentino was as lucky as Teroldego. Some survived because stubborn people refused to abandon them. Others almost disappeared completely, not because they made bad wine, but because apples paid better. Today, Val di Non is dominated by apples, and I mean completely dominated. During harvest season, churches reportedly move Mass to Saturday evening because everyone is out picking apples. Schools avoid assigning homework, and entire families work together in the orchards. But before apples, Val di Non was a wine region. One of its most important grapes was Gropello di Revo. Even the name reflects this character. Gropello derives from the local word grop, meaning knot, a reference to the tightly packed grape clusters. During the Austro-Hungarian Empire, wines from this valley were exported to Vienna, Prague, and Salzburg. It was exported in significant quantities for the imperial court of Emperor Franz Joseph. Then came phylloxera, then the wars, then the flooding caused by the Santa Giustina Dam, and finally, economics finished what history had started. Apples became more profitable than wine. In some areas, vineyards disappeared entirely. In others, Gropello was replaced by varieties considered more commercially viable, including Müller-Thurgau. By the time serious revival efforts began, the grape had already become a rarity. This is one of the recurring themes of wine history. Many traditional grapes did not disappear because they made bad wine. They disappeared because something else made more money. Landscapes are choices. What survives and what vanishes is often economic before it is cultural. A few producers continue trying to revive Gropello and other nearly extinct grapes through projects like Vini dell'Angelo. Names like Lagavulin Bianco, Peverella, Rosara, and Gropello di Revo survive today largely because somebody decided they were worth remembering. And speaking of survival, there is another native grape in Trentino that probably should not still exist. Not because people abandoned it, but because nature itself makes growing it incredibly difficult. And somehow, it also produces one of the most original dessert wines in Italy. Nosiola is the only white grape truly native to Trentino. Even its name reflects its character. Nosiola likely derives from nocciola, the Italian word for hazelnut, a reference both to the golden color the grapes develop when ripe and to the subtle nutty aromas often found in the finished wine. It is delicate, low-yielding, disease-sensitive, and increasingly threatened by climate change. The grape now struggles at lower elevations because the heat has become too intense. Historically, it could be grown at elevations around 300 meters, but as temperatures have increased, many growers have been forced to move vineyards higher. Today, successful cultivation often requires sites above 400 meters. And yet, despite all of that, Nosiola produces one of the strangest and most beautiful wines in Italy, Vino Santo. In the Valle dei Laghi, the grapes are harvested and then left to dry on open racks through the winter, sometimes until Holy Week before Easter. By this point, the grapes have shriveled dramatically, concentrating sugars and flavors. Noble rot often develops naturally. The wine that emerges is amber-colored, rich with honey, dried apricot, hazelnut, spice, and a bittersweet finish unlike almost anything else in Italian wine. The entire process can take years, and the quantities produced are tiny. This is not industrial wine. This is patience turned into liquid. There is something deeply medieval about the entire process. The timing follows the religious calendar itself. The wine is literally shaped by the passing of seasons and sacred dates. And perhaps that is why wines like this feel so emotionally powerful. They remind you that wine was never originally about efficiency. It was about ritual. But while Nosiola represents patience, there is another Trentino wine that represents pleasure. And strangely enough, one of the greatest endorsements this wine ever received happened moments before a man was dragged to hell. Marzemino is grown primarily in the Val Lagarina in southern Trentino. It is floral, elegant, lightly spicy, and filled with notes of cherry and violet. But what made Marzemino immortal was not just the wine itself, it was Mozart. In Don Giovanni, first performed in 1787, the main character raises his glass and specifically demands Marzemino before his descent into hell. Excellent Marzemino, which may be the greatest wine endorsement in classical musical history. And honestly, the scene tells you something important about the wine's reputation in 18th century Europe. Marzemino was associated with pleasure, refinement, abundance, and indulgence. Even kings trusted it. Historical accounts suggest that Henry III of France drank Marzemino during his travels because he feared being poisoned and considered the wine safe. When a king trusts your wine with his life, that says something. In the highest and most extreme vineyards of Trentino, traditional viticulture becomes almost impossible. The climate is too harsh, disease pressure is too severe. So producers began experimenting with peewee wines, fungus-resistant hybrids bred specifically to survive difficult conditions with minimal chemical treatment. Varieties like Solaris and Souvenir Gris can withstand conditions that conventional vines struggle to survive. And in some of these vineyards, there is an additional complication: bears. One winemaker reportedly avoids entering the vineyard at dawn because a bear regularly patrols the area at that hour, which means that somewhere in Trentino, the work schedule of a vineyard is partially determined by the movements of a bear. And honestly, that feels appropriate. Because viticulture in Trentino often feels less like agriculture and more like coexistence with the mountain itself. Valle di Cembra is one of the most dramatic wine landscapes in Italy. The slopes are steep, the soils are volcanic porphyry, the labor requirements are immense. And from these slopes comes one of the most surprising wines in Trentino, Müller-Thurgau. For decades, Müller-Thurgau had a mediocre reputation internationally. But grown here at altitude, on volcanic soils shaped by glaciers, the grape becomes something entirely different. The wines gain acidity, aromatic precision, and mineral tension that challenge everything people think they know about the variety. Sometimes terroir does not just improve a grape, sometimes it redeems it. In the 1980s, the American market changed Trentino forever. Demand for Pinot Grigio and Chardonnay exploded. And Trentino, with its cool climate and massive cooperative infrastructure, was perfectly positioned to supply it. By 2009, white grapes represented more than 2/3 of the region's vineyard surface. Commercially, this was a success, but culturally, it created a problem. The same region capable of producing extraordinary sparkling wine, ancient indigenous grapes, and complex mountain whites became internationally associated with inexpensive supermarket Pinot Grigio. The bulk wines became the public face of the region, and the more interesting wines disappeared into the background. This is one of the strange paradoxes of wine. Success can sometimes hide identity instead of revealing it. Today, Trentino contains multiple DOC denominations, each reflecting a different piece of the region's identity. Teroldego Rotaliano DOC protects the homeland of Teroldego. Trento DOC governs the traditional method sparkling wines, now known worldwide as Trento DOC. Trentino DOC acts as the broad umbrella designation for much of the province. And smaller appellations preserve highly specific local traditions. What becomes clear very quickly is that Trentino is not one wine culture. It is several overlapping wine cultures sharing the same mountains. Trentino is a region where wine has survived wars, economic collapse, industrialization, climate, and changing markets. It's a place where endangered grapes still cling to mountain valleys, where dessert wines are still shaped by the religious calendar, where sparkling wine rivals champagne, where vineyards coexist with bears, and also where some of the most distinctive wines in Italy remain almost unknown outside the region itself. The easiest thing you can do is buy a bottle of Teroldego, Nosiola, or Marzemino and discover what all of this tastes like in a glass. Because ultimately that's what wine history is. Not dates, not laws, not trade routes. Memory. Liquid memory.